Maseches Bava Kamma Daf Tzadi Vez. We're getting to the end of the 8th parak of the Masechta. We begin with the last Mishnah, which discusses the concepts of mechila, forgiving someone who has injured or embarrassed you. And this will take us into Agadata. The Gemara speaks about a number of drashas relating to some stories in Chumash Bereshis and Chumash Shemais. And along the way, the Gemara looks for sources for a number of expressions, all brought in conversation between the same two Amoraim, where they each have separate sources for each of these expressions. Let's begin. The Mishnah discusses mechila for embarrassing someone or for hurting him. So the Mishnah says, even though you pay for having hurt someone or for having embarrassed him, there is no mechila until you ask for a mechila, meaning you don't take off the complaint against you until you ask him for a mechila. You have to be mevakesh. And we learned that from the exchange between Avram Avinu and Avimelech, when Avimelech had taken Sarah away from him, and Hashem had brought tzaras upon him and his household, and he told him to go ask Avram for mechila. So the Mishnah quotes the pasuk of Ata Hashev Eshes Ha'ish Ki Navihu Yisbal Batcha V'Chiyei. Go and return the man's wife. He's a navi, and he'll daven for you, and you will live. Says the Mishnah, how do you know that if he's not meichel him, that if somebody injures you and you're not meichel him, that you are considered to be wicked, you're considered to be cruel? So that it says that Avram was mispal for him. Says V'Yispalel Avraham El Holakim V'Yirpa Lakim Es Avimelech. Says the Mishnah further, what about inviting someone to injure you or your property? Are you allowed to do that? So the Mishnah discusses two variables. First of all, are we talking about injuring you or damaging your property? And second of all, are we talking about where he said, come do it, or he said, come do it on the condition that you'll be putter for it? So in all these, the only situation in which he's actually putter is where it's for property, not the person himself, and he says you'll be putter. So if he says, come, put my eye out, cut off my hand, break my leg, whether he said I'm not to be putter or not, you still chayiv. There is no ptur for that. The Gemara will explain why. If, however, he said, come rip my clothing or break my jug, so there, if he said on the condition that you'll be putter, he's taka putter. But if he just said to do it, then he would be chayiv. Now, last halacha, the Mishnah says, if he says go do it to someone else on condition to be putter, that's not going to be a ptur, and therefore the person would be chayiv, whether it was begufay or b'mamayne. Now the Gemara begins with a brisa. Says the Gemara, all the things that even if you pay for causing embarrassment to someone, but the pain which you caused him, the pain of the embarrassment, Rashi says, is you bring him all the gifts, rams, karbanis in the world. There is no mechila until you ask mechila from him. That's the only way that sin goes off. Like it says, Hashev Eshes Ishki Navihu V'Yispal B'Cha Ba'adcha. Same pasuk the Mishnah brought. Now the Gemara asks, why does it have to point out that she was the wife of a navi? Only the wife of a navi you have to return. If it wouldn't be the wife of a navi, he wouldn't be obligated to return her to her husband. So it says Reb Shmuel bar Nachmani, with these words Hashem was addressing something else. He's quoting Reb Yonasan here. He says you have to return the woman to her husband, whoever she is. It makes no difference at all. By saying that he's a navi, Hashem is answering Avimelech's claim that it wasn't fair that he's being punished if he asked what is her relationship to him, and he was told she's a sister. So he was fair. He did the right thing. He asked. So why is he receiving a punishment of that? And he said, Hagoy gam tzadik taharog, you're going to kill me? I'm innocent. I didn't do anything wrong. He said she's my sister, and she said he's my brother. So on that we answer, he's a navi, and he understands, and you should know better than this. If a guest comes to visit your city, you ask him about food and drink. You don't ask him about his wife. You don't ask him who's the woman that's with you. That's not a normal thing to do. So we understood what you were doing. We understood what you were after. So of course he's going to say achaysehi. And the Gemara points out, you see from here, the sense Hashem answered Avimelech really was chayiv misa for what he did. He had a special rachmanas, and therefore the fact that he did not learn the derech eretz, he did not know the proper way of doing things, and he violated this basic common sense, that was enough to cause him the death penalty for what he did. Now the Gemara continues with more drashas about this incident. So the pasuk says, Ki atzar Hashem, that Hashem had closed up the internals of Avimelech's household. Ba'ad kol rechem neves Avimelech. So the Gemara says, what's atzar? What is the double lashon for? So the Gemara says there were one is for the men and one is for the women. The Gemara brings three versions as to how many things were blocked up in the systems of the men and the women. So first, the Gemara says one for the man, and that's that he could not expel Shechvaz Zera. Two for the woman, she couldn't expel Shechvaz Zera that was in her womb, and she also couldn't give birth. Now we have a brisa that says it was two for the man and three for the woman. It adds, besides for Zera, for each of them, it also adds Kitanim, it adds urine. That applied for each of them, in addition to the ones we mentioned before. And then Ravina says 3 for the man and 4 for the woman, in addition to the ones which we said up till now. It also mentions Gedalim Pitabas, and that is the fecal, the bowel movements were also blocked for each of them. So it comes out the man suffered from a blockage of zera, urine, and constipation, and the woman suffered from all those 3 plus an inability to actually give birth. The Gemara continues and it says, "Ba'ad kol rechem," for all wombs, says Gemara, all wombs, even to include chickens, that they stop laying eggs. Now it says Rava to Rabba Bar Mari, what is the source for the expression that the Rabbanan say, anyone who asks for Rachmanas, anyone who is mispala for his friend, if he himself needs that thing, he is answered first. So Rabba Bar Mari answered, it comes from Iyov, because it says, "V'Hashem shav es shavos Iyov b'hispalei ba'ad re'ehu." Hashem answered for Iyov, and he returned to Iyov because of the prayers that he did for his friend. So Rava said, you learned it from there, I learned it from somewhere else, I learned from here the story with Avraham Avinu, because it says, "V'yispal Aram el Elikim v'yirpa Elikim es Avimelech v'es ishtali Melissa v'yed leidu," that Avram was mispal for Avimelech and for the members of his household, and they gave birth. And right after it says, "V'Hashem pakad es Sarah kasher amar," Hashem remembered Sarah as he had said, and Sarah gave birth to Yitzchak. The word pakad should have said Vayifgoid Hashem. Pakad means that it happened previously, it happened already. It means that it happened before. It happened before Avimelech's family gave birth, and for his household gave birth, which shows that Sarah was answered first because of the tefillos that Avram did for Avimelech. Now the Gemara, having brought this conversation between Rava and Rabba Bar Mari about the source of an expression or halacha, the Gemara brings a number of other similar conversations about other expressions or halachas. So the Gemara says that Rava said to Rabba Bar Mari, what is the source of this popular expression that people will say, that you pull out the cabbage with the weeds? If you have weeds growing near a cabbage, you try to pull out the weeds, you'll rip out the actual valuable stuff, the cabbage too, by accident. Meaning to say that you often lose, or you throw out, you include the good together with the bad. So Rabba Bar Mari said the source is from the pasuk Lama Terivu Elai Kulchem Pashatem Bi Yinum Hashem. Hashem is speaking to the Navi Yirmiyahu, and he says, all of you rebelled against me. That seems to include the Navi also, as the cabbage together with the Rishayim. And Rabba said my source is from the pasuk where Hashem is speaking to Moshe and Aaron about Klal Yisrael. It says, Ad onami antem l'shmar mitzvah sai. How long have you refused to keep my mitzvahs and my Torah, including Moshe and Aaron, in that condemnation? Next thing was the question that Rava asked Rabba Bar Mari when Yosef brought his brothers to Parai after he revealed himself. It says that he took 5 of the ends of his brothers, Miktsei Chav. He took 5 and he presented them to Parai, implying that he took the 5 weakest ones. The Gemara says, which 5? So Rav Yechanan says was the 5 that in the brachos of Moshe Rabbeinu have their names mentioned twice. The fact that their name is repeated in the bracha means they needed an extra chizik, and therefore they must be the weaker ones. And those are Dan, Zvulun, Gad, Asher, and Naphtali. So Gemara asks, what about Yehuda? Yehuda is also mentioned it twice, as it says, V'zos Yehuda v'yamar Shema Hashem Kol Yehuda. It says Yehuda twice, but he certainly wasn't one of the weaker ones. So how can you say that that's what it means? So my answer is Yehuda's second mentioning of his name had a specific function. It was needed there for a reason, because Yehuda needed a Yeshua. What's it referring to? So Marcos Shmuel Bar Nachman, he says the name of Rav Yonasan. The pasuk says Yechi Ruvain Val Yamos V'Yehi Misav Mispar. Ruvain should live and not die. And V'Zaisli Yehuda, and then afterwards it goes into Yehuda. So it says all the 40 years that Klal Yisrael was in the Midbar, the bones of Yehuda were rattling around in his coffin, because he had a problem. He had told Yaakov that if he doesn't bring Binyamin back, then he's going to be he's going to lose his haba. Now, even though he did bring Binyamin back, however, we know that a kola, even with a tanai, has to be claimed to some extent, and therefore he was left out of being able to find menucha. So what happened was that he was rolling around. He was, it seems like his limbs were even dismembered inside the coffin until Moshe came and he was mispalel. He said the entire reason that Reuben admitted to his chait, which was moving the bed of Yaakov Avinu, was because he saw that Yehuda admitted to his chait of Tamar. So since he said that inspiration, therefore it should be a schos for him. And Hashem listened to Kol Yehuda, and that's why it says Shema Hashem Kol Yehuda. Hashem listened to the sound of Yehuda, and the limbs all clicked together in the right spot. Now, he still wasn't allowed to go up to the Yeshiva Shemaila, and therefore Moshe's bracha continues and says, "El Amay Tivayenu," he should go join his nation. Now, he arrived there amongst all the Talmidei Chachamim that were learning Torah together. However, he couldn't understand what was being said. He couldn't get involved. And therefore it says, Yadav Ravloi, that he should know what was happening. And then, to take it a step further, that he could even win the conversation and that the halacha would be like him. And therefore it says, Ve'ezer mitzarov tihiyeh, and that's the conclusion of that. Okay, next. Rava said to Rabbi Bar Mari, again, what is the source of this? That people say that poverty follows the poor, meaning the poor get poorer. So he said, it's from the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that when people brought Bikurim, the rich people would bring containers made of silver and gold, and it would be returned to them, so they didn't lose any money on the deal. The poor people brought woven baskets of willow, and they gave those to the Kohanim, and they didn't get them back. So you see, the next year they had to go make more, and so they lost. And so you see, poverty follows the poor. So Rava said that is your source, but I learned it from the fact that a Mitzayra has to say Tamei Tamei Yikra. He has to call out and announce the state of Tumah that he's in. That means that the poor just get poorer. It gets worse. Not only does he have tzaras, but he has to suffer the ignominy of announcing it. The next thing they spoke about was this statement of the Chachamim, Hashkem ve'echol b'kayitz v'bnei chama b'cher v'bnei atzina. You should get up early and eat during the summer because of the sun and the heat, and during the winter because of the cold. And they also say that 60 people ran fast in order to reach the bread of the morning, and they weren't able to reach it on time. So what's the source of all that? So Rabbi quoted the pasuk. It says, "Lo yirvu v'lo yitzmu v'lo yakem sharav v'shemesh." Don't go hungry and don't not drink, so that you should not be struck by heat stroke and by the sun. And that will be to save you from those things. So Rabbi said, you learn it from there, I learned it from somewhere else. It says, that Avodah, that's referring to Kriyishma and Tefillah. And then it says, continuing, the pasuk says, so that shows that you're going to eat bread and drink water. And what comes afterwards, I'll remove sickness from you. And Rabbi it says that refers to the Mara, that there were 83 diseases in the Mara, Gematria Machla, and all of them can be avoided by eating bread with salt in the morning and a bit of water. Next thing that Rava asked Rabbi Bar Mari is, what is the source of that which people say? If your friend calls you a donkey, take the saddle from him and put it on, meaning don't argue with him, just accept what he says. So that's from Hagar, who was asked by the Malach, Vayomer Hagar Shivchas Sarai Aimizebah V'Anas Elechi. He said, Hagar, maid servant of Sarai, from where do you come and to where do you go? And she said, Mipnei Sarai Gevirti Anechi Barach. I'm going to run away from Sarai, my master, because the Malach called her Sarai's Shivcha. She called Sarah her master. So you accept what people say to you. Next said Rabbi to Rabbi Bar Mari, what is the source of that it says, if there's something despicable about you, say it straight out, straightforward. So that comes from Eliezer Eved Avram, who started off by saying Eved Avram Anechi. First of all, get it out front that you're an Eved. Next said Rabbi to Rabbi Bar Mari, what is the source of that people say, humble walks the duck, but its eyes are towards the sky. Meaning to say that people walk humbly, but shouldn't be embarrassed to ask for what they need, whether it's spiritually or physically. So that's from the fact that it says, V'hetiv Hashem la'adaini Zacharta es amasecha. That Abigail said to David HaMelech, when you'll become king and when my husband will die, then you can remember me and you can come back to me. Next thing Rava asked Rabbi Bar Murray is, what is the expression that people say 60 pains are suffered by someone who hears his friend chewing, he hears the sound of his tooth, he hears his meal, but he himself is not invited. So he gave a source. It says that Bathsheba was saying to David HaMelech that she and Shlomo were not invited to the party made to unseat them. So she said, "V'li ani avdecha l'sadik ha'kainu v'niyah ben Yehoyada Shlomo avdecha le'kara." She didn't call me. This was actually Nasan Hanavi speaking. She didn't call me Tzadik ha'kainu v'niyah ben Yehoyada or Shlomo. So, but he's speaking of the pain of not being invited. Said Rabbi, I have a different source. It says that about Yitzchak marrying Rivka, and then afterwards Avram went to marry another wife. There's a Yeviel Yitzchak Ha'ila Sarah Imai V'yikach es Rivka V'atila Elisha V'yavel V'yinochem Yitzchak Acharei Imai. Yitzchak took a wife and he felt better from the loss of Sarah, and Avram was, as it were, jealous, and therefore he went, and right after this V'yikach Isha Shma Keturah. Next thing Rav asked Rabbi Bar Murray was, what is the source of that people say the wine belongs to the master, belongs to the king, but people show gratitude to the pourer, the one who just pours the wine? So he said that's because of the pasuk v'samachta se'edcha alav l'man yishmu v'yiron kol hadas b'nei Yisrael. Hashem told Moshe, put your hands on Yeshua, and then he will receive the power of leadership from you. And then it says v'Yeshua b'nun mali rachachma ki samach Moshe ziyadav olav v'yishmu elev kol b'nei Yisrael. All of Kol Yisrael were in awe of the fact that Moshe had given him the power of nevuah and of leadership, but it really came from Hashem, not from Moshe. Next thing he asked him is, what is the source of that which people say a hungry dog will even swallow rocks? So that's a pasuk nefesh svei atavas nefesh nefesh reva kolmar masaik. End of the pasuk, they were saying if someone's really hungry, anything bitter tastes sweet. Next thing he says, what is the source of that people say that a bad tree will grow near a fruitless tree, meaning something which is just plain and fruitless will end up bringing something bad along with it. So he said this was mentioned in a Torah, repeated in Nevi'im, third time in Ksuvim, then it's in a Mishnah and a Brisa. In the Torah it says, V'yelech Esav el Yishmael. Esav went to Yishmael. Yishmael wasn't so bad, but Esav went to him. He was very bad. In the Nevi'im it says, V'yislach el Yiftach anashim reikim. Yiftach was joined by empty people. Ksuvim says, Kol eifli mina yishkain v'nei adam l'daim eloi. Every bird will go to its own species and people who are similar to them. The Mishnah says, Kol mechubur l'tamei tamei. Anything which is connected to a tamei thing becomes tamei itself. Kol mechubur l'tahar tahar. Anything which is connected to tahar is tahar. You have a brayso where Rabbi Elazar says that a zarzir, a sparrow, is a tamei bird from the fact that it goes to the oirev. It goes to the raven, which is a tamei bird in itself. It must be that it's from the same min. Next said Rava to Rabbi Bar Amari, what is the source of that? The people say if you call to your friend, meaning you rebuke him, and he doesn't respond, so throw a wall down on the top of him, meaning let him wallow in his own sin, and let him rebuke himself. So he says, I tried to be matar you, and you didn't purify, you're not going to be purified again. Next says, what is the source of the expression, don't throw ink into the well that you drink from? So that comes from Leitasai Ademik Chichahu, don't reject an Ademik, he's your brother, descended from Esav, Leitasai Mitzvah, Gar Yisib Ba'artzai, and don't be repulsed by an Egyptian because you were a stranger in his land. Next he asks about the expression, Dura Delina, I Delisa, Dura Delina, Eloi Delina, if you'll carry the weight with me, I'll carry it, otherwise I won't. Meaning to say, I'm not going to take the risk myself, but if you'll go with me, then I'll do it. That comes from Barak speaking to Devaira, saying, I'll go attack if you'll come with me, but if not, I'm not going to go. Next, yes, and what is the source of that which it says, which people say when we were young, we were men, and now that we're old, we've become like little children. So that's from the Apostle comparing the beginning of our Yetzias Mitzrayim to the end of it. The beginning, Hashem went with us to guide us in a pillar of cloud to show us the way. At night with a pillar of fire to give light. At the end of it, it says, I'm sending a malach to watch you, but I'm not going to go myself. Last expression he asked him about was that where it says that the curl follows the meat, meaning a little piece that comes off with the meat gets to go wherever the meat goes, even though in on its own it may not have had the right. That's from Gam Light Light got a lot of property because he was traveling together with Avram.